Hello and welcome to the Wedding Pro podcast, the podcast where we share tips and tricks for wedding vendors and couples, share insight into the wedding world, and share about our experiences. We are Gracie and Angela Felix of Felix Wedding Films. We are so glad you tuned into this week's episode. Now let's get into it. Alrighty, well, awesome. I'm very excited to go ahead and get started with this episode. As you know, we're in a series that's called What Wedding Vendors Wish You Knew. And I'm very excited to have you, Rachel, on the podcast to share kind of like the hair and makeup artist perspective. But before we kind of dive into questions, I'd love for you to share a little bit about yourself, where you're based, where you work, how you got into this, whatever you want to share with the listeners.
Cool. Yeah, I would love to. Well, originally I'm from Alabama. I've been in Georgia for about 9 years now. That's been as long as I've been married to my husband. It's been about 9 years. And yeah, we live in Marietta now and work full time doing weddings, which I love. Love weddings. Love what I do. Feel very blessed to do it. So yeah.
Awesome. And what kind of like inspired you to get into doing hair and makeup full time?
So I always say that it kind of fell in my lap, that I actually really didn't seek it out. It started when I was in high school. I always kind of did my own hair and makeup kind of crazy. I was kind of that scene kid. I would do like the black smoky eye and all the crazy colored hair. But eventually people started asking me to help them out with like proms, homecoming, senior pictures, that type of thing. And then it kind of turned into where people I didn't know were asking. And that's when, my friends and family were like, you should charge. I was like, okay, yeah, I will. And so I always remember how long I've been doing it because I remember for my first paid makeup job, I was not old enough to drive myself. I was 15. I had my learners, but my aunt drove me to my first makeup job.
Awesome. And do you typically only work in Georgia, or how does that work?
I will go wherever a client will have me. I will say Georgia, I actually recently read that Georgia is the third most popular state in all of the United States for weddings. That really surprised me. I
Wow.
was like, wow. It was Nevada first, and then it was New York, and then it was Georgia. So we beat out California. Couldn't believe it. But they say
Love that.
yeah, I know. I was like, that's great for us. But I heard it's because of the diverse landscape that we have, that, you can have city, you can have mountains, you can have coastal, we have a lot of wineries. But yeah, Georgia definitely keeps me busy. So I would say majority of my work is here, but I have had some opportunities to go to some cool places. So nothing out of the country yet. Would love that maybe one day. But yeah, I'll go wherever somebody will take me.
So I'd love to kind of dive into kind of like peeling back the curtain specifically for couples. And then, of course, I want to talk to wedding vendors because I'm sure there's a lot of misconceptions that wedding vendors have when it comes to hair and makeup. Obviously, photo, video, we interact with hair and makeup at the beginning of the day typically, and it's the end of the day for you. So we'll get into the vendors, but for couples, what do you feel like are some of the biggest misconceptions when it comes to like hair and makeup just in general?
The biggest misconception I would say people have about hair and makeup is that you have to go a lot heavier. I don't think that that is true. I think that anything that's different from what you're used to doing on a daily basis is already going to be different for you. And I think what's most important is feeling like yourself, and that's what's going to translate the best on photos. Something I try to stray my clients away from often when they're like, I know you have to go heavier. I'm like, well, it's not really like that. I mean, maybe it was back in the day when we didn't have as good quality as we do now. But yeah, I definitely don't think that that's necessary. I think feeling like yourself is the most important part, and that is what's going to translate.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that you shared that because like a very, very long time ago, I used to just like casually do modeling. And so I would get my hair and makeup done, and they would do it like very, very heavy. And I'd look in the mirror and I'm like, I just don't know I don't know if I like this. But then on camera, it's like, oh, it looks great. but
Yeah.
then I don't want to walk out into the world like this because it's not me.
Mm,
So I think that definitely having brides and like, bridesmaids, the mother of the bride, feeling like themselves, not just in pictures, but like also
right.
in person. I think that's a really good piece of advice.
Yeah, and I would also say that it's different because what you were doing, it's kind of like you're modeling something that you're not, right? It's like you're kind of playing a character. But on your wedding day, I think that's the most important time to be authentically you. So I think
Mhm.
I could understand it for, something like what you were saying with the modeling, where
Yeah.
it's definitely wasn't you. But for your wedding day,
Mhm.
definitely you should feel like yourself.
Mhm. Yeah. And what do you feel like is a good time frame for brides to book your services? Like, is it like 12 months out? Is it sooner, like 6 months out? What's like the best time frame for you, ideally, for them to book?
You took the words right out of my mouth. So I always say no less than 6 months, but no more than a year. Personally, for me, I don't book out more than a year in advance. It's a little too hard to forecast with like pricing and everything. So that's what I do personally. And then if you are closer to the 6 months, sometimes your options can tend to dwindle. Now, I will say this is changing in recent years, but hair and makeup does tend to be a vendor that is one of the last to book. So I know with photographers, it can be years in advance. It's a little bit different for hair and makeup. I do think we are kind of one of the last vendors to get booked. It is starting to change. Some people are starting to really prioritize hair and makeup as one of the most important vendors, but for most people, it's one of the last vendors to get booked. So I would definitely say 6 months to a year is kind of that sweet spot.
Okay. That's actually kind of similar for video. We sometimes are the last to be booked, but a lot of times we are also booked with the photographer, so it's kind of all over the place. Like ideally, I like between 9 months to a year for couples to book us,
For sure.
but sometimes it's 6 months out, sometimes even sooner, and I'm like,
Yes.
okay, it's a little rushed, but yep, we'll do it.
Question for you. Do you feel like you notice a difference in the brides who book further out versus the brides who are more last minute?
That's a good question. I feel like the ones that book very, very last minute, like a month out, they didn't initially value video, and then maybe now they're realizing, oh my gosh, I actually like I want my speeches recorded, I want my ceremony and my vows recorded.
Right.
So then I feel like they then value it. But yeah, I mean, the couples that are booking us with their photographer, they definitely value video a lot. And we
Mm,
love that. We do typically work with couples who really do care about the video. So I can't really speak about like other people's experiences.
for sure.
Yeah. And what about like a trial run for hair and makeup? I know that I've heard that like a lot of hair and makeup artists don't love the term trial run, but like I think you know what I'm talking about.
Right.
How important is it for a bride to like do that first quote unquote trial run, and what should she expect at that appointment?
So to me, the importance of a trial run is honestly more dependent upon the client. I have never had it happen where a bride didn't book a trial run and it was an issue. I feel like if they're comfortable with that, that is a telltale sign that they're less particular about hair and makeup or it's less important to them to where they're more than likely going to be okay with it. However, if hair and makeup is super important to you, you have a specific vision in mind and you kind of want to see, preview your services before, I would definitely say book one. But yeah, I've never had a bride who didn't book one ever. I will say I do recommend them. They're a lot of fun. I would actually say one of the biggest benefits to booking a trial run is getting to know your vendor in advance. I know with photo and video, one of the packages that you guys offer is like an engagement shoot. And I feel like
Mm-hmm.
that is really important to kind of, build that connection prior to just meeting them on the wedding day. So I
Yeah.
think it's one of the biggest benefits, but I've never had anything bad. Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Never booking a travel. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I definitely see the benefit of it. I definitely did that for my wedding because
Yes.
I'm not a very picky person when it comes to hair and makeup because I don't really do my own makeup or hair that much, so I'm like, I trust you. You're the professional. You make me look great.
Yes.
But it was nice to be like, okay, yeah, I did like that style, but maybe tweak this a little bit.
Sure.
So I really liked doing it, and I definitely recommend it for all brides.
Yes, you don't have to worry about, doing those little tweaks on the wedding day. And
Mm-hmm.
I will say, I have heard, you hear the telltale like horror stories from
Yeah.
we booked a trial. So when it comes to that, I would say, definitely do it. But, you know, not to sound vain or anything, but I think that that is coming from the artists that are less experienced, where you have those horror stories.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I
Yeah.
haven't really experienced that. I think most of my brides are very pleased. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I won't say the specific vendor, but we did have a situation like that for our wedding. We booked I'll just call it a trial run so that you don't know the vendor category, realized they were not a good fit for us, and then had to let them go and hire someone else. So
got it.
I definitely recommend it just for any vendor that has a service beforehand.
Yes.
Just go ahead and do it. See if they're a good fit. Hopefully they are.
Yes.
You know,
You
but
only benefit from it. I mean, there's nothing to lose. I know some vendors they do charge extra, but yeah, you only get benefits from it. So
yeah.
I would agree that, it's a positive for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I agree. Do you have like any tips for how like brides and bridesmaids and just like the whole female bridal party can prepare for a really smooth beauty experience on the wedding day? This answer could go in so many directions, but just whatever it brings up, you could share.
I got you. Yes. So there's a couple of different kind of facets we could go into here. The timeline, I would say don't sweat the small stuff. If you're a bride and you have every single name kind of, put where you want to go. If that person's not ready, just roll with it. Go to the next person, no big deal. I would say what's the most important with the timeline is having the person who's going to go first already determined in advance. That is so important. I can't tell you how many times it's happened to me. Ask any hair and makeup vendor, they'll tell you the same thing. You first get there, you set up, you're ready to go. You're like, okay, who's first? And everybody starts like, they're like, don't look at me. I'm not ready. Like, oh, I have to go brush my teeth. Like they make themselves
Yeah.
available on purpose. I totally understand. Nobody really does want to be first of the day. So I get that. But determining who goes first in advance, making sure they're ready on time is really important because we are the first vendor
Yeah.
of the day and that can trickle down to the rest of the day if we don't start on time. So that's important. And then also having inspiration photos ready to go that are bride approved. That's important as well. Having a verbal description does not always work. Sometimes
Mm.
your idea of natural, my idea of natural can be two totally different things. So if you just state that, there's room for confusion. But if you photo, that kind of takes out the guesswork and makes it to where it's like we're both looking at the same thing and
Yeah.
go from there. So yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah, I've seen like it's like a meme or something about like how what guys think is natural and they show a picture and it's like we can tell that this is not natural. This is a lot of makeup and it just looks, like a lighter makeup, but
Mhm.
this took a lot of work.
Right. They say that
I
that's
feel
like,
like it's the same thing.
oh, it's totally the same thing. They say that's like neutral glam. It's not natural
Hmm.
glam. There's no such
Yeah.
thing as natural glam.
Yep.
That's just neutral. So yeah, definitely a photo that helps tremendously. And then we can kind of go from there with the verbal description, pointing out the things you like and you don't like. So yeah, both
Hmm.
really, really important.
Yeah. This question relates to kind of what you were talking about with timeline and also kind of relates to the vendors because obviously the hair and makeup timeline affects the whole day basically.
Right.
How do you what do you recommend when it comes to timeline? I guess how do you help couples and like brides know when you should start and when should be your end time?
So I have kind of a hot take on this. We talked about this a little bit on our
Yeah.
call. I definitely think that hair and makeup should be completely done by the photographer's arrival time. I feel like there's no reason whatsoever to have true getting ready photos. I think that those can be staged when everybody's in their pajamas and ready to go, for the road pictures and everything. I Sometimes the getting ready process is not as pretty or aesthetic as, we would like it to be. So I think staging those helps things go more smoothly tremendously. So yeah, that I would definitely say will help a lot. Making your finish time the photographer's arrival time so that can there's no overlap there whatsoever. Yeah, I think that that's huge for sure. And then, yeah, like I said, having who's going first in advance, that's really important. Having your head count in advance is huge. That will determine how many artists are needed, what time we need to start, your location, what time the venue may allow entry. But yeah, a couple different things. There's a lot of things to
Yeah.
consider.
Definitely. Yeah, we'll get into the whole vendor side soon, so I guess I won't share that. But
Okay.
are there any like don'ts that you feel like brides and bridal parties should know when it comes to hair and makeup, which is like, I don't know, I feel like I've heard people say, "Oh, you should not wash your hair the day before." I don't know, all these random things. Are there any don'ts that you're like, "Please don't do this."
Well, I'm glad that you said that because I actually feel the opposite. I feel like what you just said is actually a really common misconception. It did used to be really popular. They'd say, have dirty hair, have dirty hair. It works better. That's not the case
Yeah.
anymore. We have products that can give that texture, and the last thing we want is oily, dirty hair. So definitely have your hair washed within 12, 24 hours of receiving your services. That's really important. And then don't try anything new. That's also super important. I understand we
Yeah.
feel the best when we're getting these services done, but the last thing we want to do is, try that new hydrofacial and then you're a little
Yeah.
bit more sensitive than what you thought and you had like a bad reaction. If you want to try it months in advance, I would say go for it, but otherwise, it's not worth it. I definitely wouldn't try
Yeah.
even like a new product. You just never know. So I would definitely stick with what's your usual.
Yeah. That's good advice. I can see how that would go south.
For sure.
I've seen all those bridal movies.
Yes, no, it is a recipe for disaster. I've seen it happen.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, before we kind of hop into like the vendor side, is there anything else that's top of mind that you wish that brides knew about working with hair and makeup, whether it's like processes or, like the inquiry, booking, day of, anything like that?
I would say what's most important, if I could just give like one generalized piece of advice, it would be to research your hair and makeup artist. I think that's extremely important. And now I mean research a little deeper than just like going on Instagram, seeing who has the
Yeah.
prettiest aesthetic. Because it's easy to have that. That's the whole point of Instagram is to highlight the best parts of it. I mean, take it off of Instagram, take it where it's more personal accounts of experiences that people have had with that person and kind of go from there. Even if it's like, say they don't have any reviews. First of all, I think that is a little bit of a red flag. It's like, why don't they? I
Yeah.
think that they
Yeah.
should. But then also reach out to people. Have you heard from them? Have you ever worked with them? You know anybody who has? That right there, I feel like takes away the guesswork where it's like, they could have beautiful work and maybe they do provide beautiful work, but sometimes a vendor's bedside manner can be just as important as the actual service they provide. So I think that's super
Absolutely.
important to research your vendor, thoroughly.
Yeah, I agree. And that honestly goes for all vendor categories. Like you said, if they don't have reviews, like why don't they?
Right.
They should.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't think I would I don't know. That's me. I wouldn't hire someone who didn't have reviews just cuz
Right.
I mean, this is your one wedding day.
Right.
So probably should, make sure that they're not just talented, not just that they do great hair and makeup, but you want to make sure that they're not going to be very difficult to work with. They're
Of
going to be
course.
enjoyable on the wedding day.
Yes.
They're going to show up timely.
Stay on time. Yes.
Yeah,
And
that's a big one. We'll talk about that.
yes, yes. That's so true. So
Oh
true.
my gosh. Um, awesome. Well, I'd love to kind of like get into the vendor side of
Yes.
like hair and makeup misconceptions and all that. So, from your perspective, what are some things that you feel like other vendors misinterpret about hair and makeup artists? And this could be literally any vendor. I know you work closely with photo, video, planner, but could be anyone.
Um, I guess I would say that I would see some vendors maybe discrediting hair and makeup, but there is a lot that goes into it. It's the emotional capacity, setting the tone for the day, since we are the first vendor of the day. That's one of my favorite parts that I love. But also it's learning how to make it last through the tears. It's the communication that goes up prior to that. I mean, I think that hair and makeup has come such a long way that it's not really so much of a side gig anymore, that it is more of a full-time professional career for most of us anyway. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that there is a lot that goes into it, and I think that sometimes that can be underrepresented. Now, don't get me wrong. I will say I understand that some hair and makeup artists do tend to have an unprofessional vibe. I've seen that, and I'm not sure where that comes from. I'm also not sure where not having a license comes from. There's lots of unlicensed people that, work in hair and makeup, but you do need a license. So something about our industry can attract an unprofessionalism. I'm not sure where that comes from. That's why it's so important to research your vendor. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I definitely think that we can kind of have that across the board, that, you get those stereotypes, but there's a lot that goes into it. And so,
Mm-hmm.
you know, as hair and makeup kind of goes on, people are starting to prioritize it. So, it's definitely not just hair and makeup. There's a lot behind
Mm-hmm.
the scenes that goes into it for sure.
Yeah. Yep. And it's a lot of things that us as videographers and like photographers, we don't see it until the end because we're getting there either right before the bride is done or as the bride is done and you're wrapping it up. So it's like our interactions with you guys, it's more just like, oh, hi. Nice to meet you. Okay,
Yeah.
bye.
Yes. Yeah, I definitely think it's interesting how, my end of the day is y'all's beginning. And
Yeah.
I emphasize with that. I think that you guys have a pretty tough job, and I definitely respect what you guys do.
I think the same about you. You guys got to get up really early and do a lot of hair and makeup on a lot of people
That's
in
true.
a specific time frame.
Yes. Yes.
Each role has its, difficulties.
Pros and its cons for sure.
So we kind of touched on this a little earlier and like also off the air, but do you have any hot takes when it comes to like timelines and communications between planners, photographers, videographers, and like hair and makeup artists? I know that we talked about like you think that photo video team should arrive basically when the bride is done. Any other hot takes about that?
I definitely have one for planners. Now, I will say I think, most planners I've worked with, they do a fantastic job. And oh my goodness, that is another job where I am just like all
Yeah.
credit to you. Like that is so impressive, what they do and what they go through. I have nothing but the utmost respect for planners. But oh my goodness, having the schedule in advance, I have had a lot of problems come from that, where sometimes
Mm-hmm.
they might send the entire schedule like the week of, and then you see where they have hair and makeup, and it's like, that's not at all what I had. And it's like, that's not going to work. And
Yeah.
then you're kind of in this last minute frenzy where you're like, man, like, what are we going to do? And then you're put in a position where it's like, either we need to cut services, we need to start earlier, or we need to hire an additional artist. And none of that is great.
Yeah.
Week leading up to a wedding. So having a generalized schedule where it's like, what time do we need to be ready for photos by? Which sometimes, there may be some communication with the photographer that's needed too, where that's not on the planner. But I think that's so important to help the bride be able to continue to book her vendors. So I actually
Mm-hmm.
require that prior to booking is, what time do you need to be finished by? So that determines the amount of artists that are going to be needed. The start time, it determines a lot. So having that in advance is huge. And when planners do have that, I'm like, love it.
Yep.
Yeah, that's
It
a hot take for planners.
Mm-hmm. And that helps. That helps the whole day. It helps every single vendor because it all just trickles down,
It
which
does.
kind of leads into this is I guess it's not a hot take, but it's a spicy, topic that we talked about off the air about like how a lot of hair and makeup artists kind of get bashed on social media, mainly probably by, photographers and videographers about running behind on schedule. I know we talked about this off air, but what are your thoughts on that?
I would definitely say that I do have a hot take on that, and I think it's true. I have seen it with my own eyes. Like I said, I feel like hair and makeup artists something about the industry can attract unprofessionalism, and like I said, I have seen it where it's like, oh my goodness, we were 2 hours behind because of hair and makeup. Now, granted, that was not me and my company. I think
Yeah.
let's put that out there. To me, that is what truly separates the amateur from the pro. I feel like being fully transparent about how long things are going to take and adding a little bit of a buffer in there is
Mm-hmm.
so important. And that's something that only comes from years of experience on the job and seeing how, with an event like a wedding, things can run behind. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's something totally out of our hands that we can't control. Like, you're there on time, you were ready to go, and, somebody's not in your seat. There's nothing we can do about that. And sometimes that is the case. Sometimes it is something that's not, we can't control that. But yeah, it's a hot take that I have seen a lot of hair and makeup artists be late. And to me, that's why hair and makeup is an important vendor to research thoroughly to
Mm-hmm.
make sure that, they can do great hair and makeup. It's going to look beautiful, but are you going to be on time for your wedding?
Yeah. Yep. Very, very important.
Yes. Research your vendors.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And typically, if couples are working with a planner, planners will have recommendations based on, you know, that they know that this hair and makeup artist is reliable, not only talented, but also timely.
Yes.
Obviously, that's super important.
So important.
We've filmed a lot of weddings over the years, and especially in our early years, we did see that kind of all the time of hair and makeup running behind. And like you said, that was probably because they were, more like amateur, not necessarily professional hair and makeup artists.
For sure.
But we still have moments where we're at weddings and it's a very nice wedding and hair and makeup is running behind. And
For sure.
thankfully it's not that often, but it always stresses me out because I'm like, oh my gosh, like
Right.
everything needs to be shifted. We have a first look soon. We have this and that and this and that.
I know that puts a ton of stress on y'all because it's like you don't want to say like, hey, like stop
Yeah.
makeup. We need to begin. So I know
Yeah.
that minimizes the amount of time that you have with the bride. So yeah, I could definitely see that from your perspective how that would be extremely frustrating.
Yeah. Yeah. And we don't want like in my mind, I'm, in a panic, like, oh my gosh, we're behind. But then it's like, we can't show that to the couple. So the bride doesn't even know that we're behind schedule. Like, she's just enjoying her time.
Yes.
And we're just like, okay, yep, we're
Everything's
ready to
fine.
move to the next thing. Okay.
You
But
know,
it definitely, it's not ideal.
it's not ideal. And I have been told by so many brides are like, you have the calmest air to you. And I'm like, I'm always blown away when they say
Yeah.
like, wow, in reality, you don't know that I am a bundle of anxiety at all times, not calm at all. And so when people say that to me, I'm like, okay, I guess, I was meant to be in this industry. Apparently.
Yeah.
So,
That's good. We actually get a lot of our reviews talk about that same exact thing, that we're so calm,
mm,
which I can totally see that for Angelo because he's very like put together basically always. But I'm like, for me, you don't know that I'm thinking about a million things in my head, but I'm really glad that I come off as very calm
yes.
because
Well,
that is my goal.
you definitely always come across very put together. You don't seem like there's a million things. You seem like you always staying on task and very calm, cool, and collected. So,
Yeah, that's the goal. Don't want to add any stress to our couples.
yes, for sure.
Do you feel like there is any advice you could give to specifically photographers and videographers for how to work better alongside beauty teams? I don't know if you've ever run into instances where like the photo video team moves your stuff or like tells you to get out of the window because they want the good lighting or anything like that.
Well, I hate to sound repetitive, but I do think that what I said earlier as far as hair and makeup being done, I feel like it takes all that out. And that's why I feel so
Yeah.
strongly about that. Because otherwise it's like all you would have to do in the months leading up is figure out when the photographer's arriving, which that's information super easy to get as long as you have your photographer, you're going to have that. And then work your hair and makeup beauty schedule around that. Now, it's one thing if the photographer is going to do, details first and they're going to do groom's photos first. That might be a more significant period of time where it's like, okay, hair and makeup could still be finishing up during that time. But I think that that helps a lot, just having them already be photo ready prior to photography even getting there. But I will say also that all the photographers that I have worked with have been incredible. I mean, they have been so kind and so understanding. And no, I have never had photographers try to like move my stuff or be like, oh, scooch out of the way.
That's good.
They have asked me a lot of the time, can we do like a little mock photo shoot? And I just love it. I'm like, "Oh, yes, like you want me to be a part of it? I would love to. But no, I think photographers do great. Like I said, I respect what you guys do so much. And I feel like to avoid that, hair and makeup artists, we need to stay on time. And then finishing prior to when they arrive, I feel like takes away a ton of those kind of issues that can come up. So that would be
Mm-hmm.
a big
Yeah.
advice.
Yeah, that makes sense. I always tell couples, so this kind of relates to like timeline. I always tell couples, ideally, I would love as the video team to arrive 1 hour before hair and makeup are done because we are going to be getting establishing venue details, drone footage, detail shots of like the dress, the flat lay, etc. So we probably won't even be filming,
Mm,
hair and makeup doing anything at that point.
sure.
So that's like I really like that timeline when that happens. But I mean it's even better if hair and makeup is already done because then it's like, it's not a whole mess.
Right.
Things are cleaned up.
And I understand why you do that because I think, that's very considerate of hair and makeup artists because you're trying to give them as long of a period of time as you can. So I think that that makes sense. I would also, I guess, kind of going back to one of your previous questions, a hot take that I have for hair and
Hmm.
makeup artists is that I think it's really important that we need to utilize hiring additional artists more. I don't think
Mm.
that allotting 7 hours to hair and makeup is feasible. I think that those days are long over with. I don't think that that's feasible at all. I don't think that that's right to ask. So yeah, I think that having a shorter period of getting ready time and kind of allotting that through a couple of different artists will help it be better for everybody where it's like hair and makeup's not so rushed. You don't have to get up at the crack of dawn and then
Yeah.
you're not overstepping with photographers and
Hmm.
photographers and their time that they're supposed to have with the bride as well.
Yeah. And it just gives the whole bridal party a better experience because who wants to wake up super, super early just to have one person do everybody's hair and makeup? Unless it's,
So,
like just a few people, I get that. But
totally.
if it's a big group, it's definitely nice to have more than one person because that's just
For
a
sure.
lot to ask of the bride and her family. So
Completely agree.
I did just think of something that I didn't initially think of, but what about like attire for the wedding day? Because obviously, ideally you would be done by the time photo video gets there. But a lot of times that's just not what happens. A lot of times timeline permits that photo video arrive as you're finishing up. What's your take on like how the hair and makeup artists dress? Because obviously you'll probably be in some of the photos and videos.
That's a really good question. And I would say For me and my artist, I'm not too particular about it. Um, I would say as long as it's appropriate, that's what's most important to me. I don't make my artists wear all black. That's one of the most common things. And I think if you are staying for the wedding, if I ever have been hired for touch-ups or anything, I have, worn something that's more formal while still being comfortable, just like a loose dress or something along those lines. But since we do leave before any guests arrive, as long as it's appropriate, I have had it happen where an artist that I worked with a long, long time ago, she definitely showed up wearing something that I was like, oh, I was like, grandma's gonna get an eyeful. So yeah, as long as it's appropriate, I would say that's most important. And then of course, like nothing obscene. But yeah, I would say neutral. Definitely don't wear white.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense. Well, do you feel like there's anything that we haven't touched on specifically for vendors that you feel like they should know about hair and makeup, whether it's like the business side or wedding day or just anything that comes to mind?
I would definitely say, kind of wrapping up on the vendors, I would say something that's really important to keep in mind is that we're on the same team as far as we're all there to serve our client, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I think that transparency is really important in communication leading up to the wedding day. I feel like, in my experience, that is what really, really leads to, a vendor team working really well together is when you've already had some communication leading up to the wedding day. And just understanding that it's not about who can have the bride the longest or, do your job the longest. It's about serving the bride and what's best for them. And I think most wedding vendors do that really well. I think that something about this industry really pulls people together that, love weddings in their industry or the energy that it brings. And
Mm-hmm.
so I find that most wedding vendors do that really well, that they're pretty accommodating and kind and, kind of have an overall like sense of unity with working with other vendors. So yeah, I mean, would definitely say we're all on the same team to serve our bride the best and not stepping on toes as much as possible. But I think most wedding vendors definitely do a good job of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point for any wedding vendor. Like, we are all serving the couple. It's not just about photo, video, hair and makeup, catering, whatever. Like, it's all of us working together to give our shared client the absolute best experience possible.
Mm.
How can we do that? Obviously, go above and beyond in what we do, but also working together as a team, working seamlessly together, not being catty, you know, like being helpful, even if it's not necessarily our job. Sometimes we can just lend a hand here and there with different
Mm.
vendors. So I
Yes.
think that that's really good. And a lot of vendors do that very well. So
Yes, I agree.
that's
Something
good.
about the wedding industry definitely attracts kind people.
Yeah, I agree. Well, to kind of go ahead and wrap up this episode, if there's one piece of advice that you could give to couples just relating to hair and makeup for their wedding day, what would you say?
Good
Something that you haven't shared yet. I know you've shared a lot.
Good question. I guess something that, a lot of people wouldn't think of and a lot of hair and makeup artists wouldn't admit is that you should prepare to maintain your services. That's something that, I think a lot of people don't talk about is that, they talk about, oh, it's gonna wear for 20 hours and it's gonna be cry proof and it's gonna be, bulletproof and this, that, and the other. And that's not always true. Now, there's a common misconception with waterproof makeup. Waterproof does not equate to cry proof. Tears are a mixture of oil and water, and oil is always going to break down makeup, no matter what kind it is. So that's something to keep in mind is, there's going to be a little bit of maintenance involved, whether it's reapplying your lipstick and gloss or blotting, your face if you get oily. And then the last one I would say is if you truly do have a hair type that's curl resistant, sometimes there really is not a lot that we can do. I mean, we can do as much as possible to make sure those curls last as long as possible, but sometimes with certain hair types, I mean, it just wants to fall
Yeah.
right out. And it's always the healthiest, most beautiful hair that wants to do that. So at all, if your hair does that, it's probably because you have really healthy, moisturized hair. But that is something to keep in mind, that there is some maintenance with hair and makeup. And, you can't,
Mhm.
you have to treat it like it is. You have to treat it like it's
Yeah.
a delicate flower and maintain it. If you do all that and you're aware of it, I think that those are my brides who do the best, is when they're aware they have hair and makeup done, they treat it accordingly.
Mhm. Yeah. That makes sense. That's another reason why I love it when our brides will have the hair and makeup artist, like one of them, stay until after the ceremony to do touch-ups. And like sometimes they'll do like an updo after the ceremony or
Oh, yeah.
something. Like they'll
Clean.
switch it up or they'll just touch up the hair and makeup. Because I mean, especially on a hot day, it's like
Mm.
you're definitely going to need to do some touch-ups, either you or your professional that you hired.
Now, I will say the touch-ups, they should be minimal. And I have uh I guess another hot take, that I think most touch-ups is doable for the client to do on their own. Now, if it's a look
Hmm.
change, of course, hire
Yeah.
to stick around. But if it is just touch-ups, I think your hair and makeup should be long wearing enough to where those touch-ups are pretty minimal, where it should just be
Hmm.
blotting, of course, reapplying your lipstick after eating and that type of
Yeah.
but it should be totally doable, but still prepare for it.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Well, do you have, I know that you kind of shared your last parting wishes for vendors, but before we totally wrap it up, is there anything else, any other pieces of advice that you could give to vendors about working with hair and makeup artists before we part ways?
Um, I think it was really interesting that, something that you said was, it's pretty common that hair and makeup can run behind. And like I said, that is true. I have seen that a lot myself. I've seen that with a lot of, amateur hair and makeup artists. I think a lot of people do kind of just do it on the side, don't take it as seriously. But that has happened in my career, where it's like, I've been the one, where it's like, oh my goodness, we're rushing around. And I think seeing it from our perspective would really make a big difference, because sometimes it can be things that are completely out of our control. Like
Mm-hmm.
whether, like I've had a bride where, she got cold feet, and it's like she kind of went off and had a little bit of a, a little bit of a
Gosh.
coming to Jesus moment. And, so things like that completely out of our control, where it's like when the photographer comes, it's like I almost just want to say like, I'm so sorry, but this was not me.
Yeah, this is not my fault.
Yes. So having that grace to not immediately blame the hair and makeup artist, I think can go a really long
Mm-hmm.
way. Now, that is with the caveat that, like I said, I would admit myself that I have seen a lot of hair and makeup artists run late, where they're just not accounting for enough time. And it's probably because they feel guilty about the amount of time that is realistically needed. So they try to shorten it and squeeze it down, which that's not right to do. But sometimes there are situations that are out of our control. And to keep that in mind helps us a lot. I mean, a lot.
Yeah.
We do feel some guilt around it, because you don't always get the full story of what happened. So having a little
Yeah.
grace there goes a long way.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I mean, I think that that just comes with just being a kind person and not judging people right away and
For
just
sure.
going with the flow. If it's already behind schedule, it doesn't help to be rude, you
Mm,
know. Maybe mentally we're going in circles like, "Oh my gosh," but
yes.
verbally and, the emotions that we're portraying, we can at least still be kind and not rude.
Yes, yes, completely. Which I feel like, as hair or wedding vendors in general, going with the flow, you have to keep that in mind. Where it's like, if I've ever
Mhm.
stayed for the whole wedding, it's like there's gonna be some things that don't go off exactly how you wanted them to, even if it's just minor. So going with the flow, not letting it affect you, so, so important.
Mhm. Yeah. I totally agree. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I really love this conversation, and I think our listeners will as well. Um, Before we totally close out, where can listeners connect with you on social media, website, all that good stuff?
So yeah, you guys can find me. It's just Rachel Harris Artistry across all platforms. I'm on Instagram, Facebook. That's my website. Yeah, it's Rachel Harris Artistry.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, and I'll talk to you later. Thank you so much for listening to the Wedding Pro podcast. If you found this episode helpful, we would love it for you to share with a fellow vendor or someone who's getting married soon. Your support means the world to us and helps us reach more people in this amazing industry. We'll see you next time.